National Steering Committee for Nigeria's Development Plan inaugurated.
All-inclusive Southern Kaduna Peace Summit begins.
Notorious criminal Tawase Agwaza, popularly known as Ghana, killed in a firefight with special forces in Benin.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall focus on matters arising from the recent ECOWAS Heads of State meeting.
All right, now the Economic Community of West African States, that's ECOWAS, was founded or established in May 1975. Now, the wisdom of the founding fathers was to integrate the region into an ECOWAS of people. Now, that's the goal. Now, since that treaty was signed, the process, of course, to attaining the goal has been an uphill task, and member countries have been going back and forth in terms of complying with some aspect of the integration processes. But regardless, ECOWAS has been described as a huge success comparatively with other regional integration instruments. Kinsley?
Well, several efforts, as you indicated, to promote integration within the region have indeed yielded some positive results, although the regional bloc, as it were, is still confronted with a number of challenges. Now, the political instability in Mali is the latest of the issues to be confronted by ECOWAS, plus the ECO currency and indeed a number of other matters that continue to remain on the plate of the regional bloc.
Indeed, Kinsley, that's of course including the COVID-19 pandemic, which has affected the economies of many of the member countries. But the ordinary session of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government, that's the 57th session, which just ended in Niger, in Niamey, that's the Nigerian capital, targets to, further deepen the process of integration while also dealing with those challenges. Now, many gains, of course, were celebrated at that session, and key decisions were also reached, beginning, of course, from the regional response to COVID-19, which, of course, we know that President Muhammadu Buhari is the champion. There were also gains in the area of trade, economic integration, peace and security, as Kinsley mentioned earlier. The region has been relatively stable in terms of political crisis, Kinsley.
Well, relatively, that's what you said. The region has been through a lot of crises, as we have seen. And even now, the heads of state of ECOWAS are concerned about the situation in Mali, which is why the authority of the heads of state and government of ECOWAS decided on issuing a deadline to the military that seized power in Mali, and gave them a deadline, as I said, of the 15th of this month to appoint a civilian to head a transition government. Plus, in addition to that, well, plus in addition also mean the same thing. The President Muhammadu Buhari delivered a report on the COVID-19 situation report on the region in terms of efforts being made to stabilize the region and ensure that the pandemic is contained, and to a greater extent this has been achieved.
All right, of course, Kingsley, you've talked about quite a number of issues, decisions that were reached, and we know that President Muhammadu Buhari made a very strong presentation in, of course, different areas. And one of the areas he talked about, of course, Kingsley earlier mentioned the elongation of a tenure, of course, among the political leaders. And there were also talks on monetary union, that's the convergence, into a single money currency for members of the region, and the inauguration of a ministerial committee on the ECOWAS single currency. President Muhammadu Buhari cautioned leaders on moving too quickly on a single currency for the region. Kingsley, this has been an issue.
It's been an issue,
yes.
but more particularly, President Muhammadu Buhari reminded the Francophone members of ECOWAS as to why they were proceeding with their own ECO, which is the original name that was identified for the ECOWAS common currency. So there's still disagreement, as it were, between the Francophone bloc, as it were, and the Lusophone and Anglophone members of ECOWAS. So the currency issue remains a sore point. Tenure allegation was also particularly significant because President Muhammadu Buhari raised the caution and said, look, one of the ways to prevent political crisis from erupting and therefore getting everybody expending resources and energy in trying to quell political crisis in member states is the idea of elongating a tenure through some bogus constitutional amendments or otherwise. There are a number of elections that are coming up later on this year in some of the ECOWAS countries. So these are some of the issues that have come up, plus the fact that the heads of state and government then decided to elect one of their own. That's the president of Ghana, who is now chairing the authority of the heads of states and government. There are many other matters arising from the summit, and this, of course, will form the crux of our conversation segment on Good Morning Nigeria today, and we welcome you to the program. My name is Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Claire Delabo Abdul Razak. The program is broadcast live on the network service of the NTA, that's the Nigerian Television Authority, and live from our studios here in the nation's capital, Abuja. As always, today is Thursday and not a Friday. I won't make that mistake again. We'll have our complimentary segments of the program. They'll be coming right after Comfort Modu gives us the highlights of the morning news. So let's quickly get to the news studio where Comfort is. Comfort, good morning.
A very good morning, Claire and Kingsley. Here's the morning news. A National Steering Committee to chart a new course for Nigeria's development plan has been inaugurated by President Muhammadu Buhari. The committee is to prepare the nation's medium-term National Development Plan 2021 through 2025, as well as Agenda 2050 to succeed Nigerian Vision 2020. And the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, the President described the task as vital towards the transformation of the nation's economic fortunes.
To lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty within the next 10 years, particularly given the World Bank's projection that Nigeria will become the world's third most populous country by 2050 with over 400 million people.
An all-inclusive Southern Kaduna Peace Summit has commenced with resolve by stakeholders for sincere deliberations aimed at unraveling the myths and realities behind the protracted communal violence, in the area for lasting peace. Convener of the summit and Executive Secretary, Nigerian Christian Programs Commission, Reverend Yakubu Palm, is optimistic that the summit, first of its kind, will pave the way to recoup intercommunal trust and harmony.
Once in a while, they will come in here and discuss and proffer solutions.
We as individuals must make our contributions. And when we come together, we can make a case to government as to what we need for them to help us sustain peace and development.
The socio-economic, political and security challenges in the north-central zone of the country are bringing the people together to complement government's effort at addressing such issues.
To ensure that probable peace and stability is established and sustained within the zone.
When we talk about progress, we're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about developmental, and most importantly, we're talking about education too.
And it is the end of the road for wanted Tewasi Agwaza, popularly known as Ghana, and some of his cohorts in notorious crimes as 4 Special Forces military operation killed the suspect along Makudi Boko Road in Benue State. At a press conference in Doma, Nasarawa State, Commander of the Forces, Major General Maudi Gadzama, said Ghana was killed in a firefight.
out in suit and he was killed. During search, the following were recovered: 25 by AK-47 rifles, 21 by FN rifle, 22 by Beretta pistols, 23 by pump action guns, 21 by locally fabricated submachine gun.
And latest figures from the Nigerian Center for Disease Control on COVID-19 announced that 176 cases have been confirmed in the country. FCT has 40, Lagos 34, Plateau 26, Enugu 14, Delta and Ogun have 12 each, Ondo 9, Oyo 8, Ekiti 6, Ebonyi 4, Adamawa, Nasarawa, Kwara and Rivers have 2 each, while Edo, Osun and Bauchi states recorded 1 case each. There are now 55,632 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria, 43,610 discharged, while 1,070 persons have died from the virus in the country. That's the news this hour. The program continues with Claire and Kinsley after the break. Good morning.
She cries. She cries in anguish and in pain. She bears the scourge of her grief. She toils in vain for justice and succumbs to silence. He gloats over his malady. Like a beast, he pounces with no remorse. Her cry means nothing. Her pain feeds her shame. Like an orphan, she's left to grieve in solitude. But no more will she cry in vain. Her adversaries will henceforth bear the brunt of their cruelty. Rape is evil. Rape is a plague, a pandemic of monumental consequences. We must unite and kick it out of our society.
Connect with NTA and stand against rape and rapists. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
In these uncertain times, one thing's certain. We're in this together. So Clean Protect, the antibacterial detergent that removes 99.9% germs while it cleans. Because germ-free clean is the real clean that we all need. Do your best to protect your family. So Clean Protect.
All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. It's time for business news with the Debt Management Office, DMO, releasing the public debt profile of the country, plus the tax experts tasking the federal government on more reforms. Our correspondent, Kunle Adeyeye, has details.
Data from the Debt Management Office shows that the public debt stock comprising that of the federal government and the 36 states is 31.009 trillion naira, while its dollar equivalent stands at $85.897 billion. The corresponding figure for March 31, 2020 is 26.628 trillion naira, while increase in the debt stock by 2.381 trillion naira accounted for by 3.36 billion naira budget support loan from the International Monetary Fund, new domestic borrowing to finance the revised 2020 Appropriation Act. In another development, a tax expert, Michael Tolubashe, has enjoined the federal government to introduce more reforms into its tax policies to complement the existing ones that are already yielding results.
The policy had brought a lot of companies and people into the tax net, which is very helpful.
He said taxation is a good source of revenue to government. And here are the details of Wednesday's tradings on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
All right, let's move ahead now. Newspaper review is coming up next.
All right, we have three newspapers. We have the Punch, Daily Trust, as well as the Nation newspaper. Let's begin with the Daily Trust. Daily Trust, immediately below the name flag, says federal government directs hospitals to replace striking doctors with corps members. Federal government directs hospitals to replace striking doctors with corps members. That's page 10. Furore over killing of Benue's most wanted criminal. That's the way the headline is couched. Furore over killing of Benue's most wanted criminal. That's on page 8. Bandits have encroached on University of Abuja's land. That's according to the Vice Chancellor. Bandits have encroached on Uni Abuja's land. Details on page 28. This story, sad one, says 264 Nigerians commit suicide in 4 years, with the number of riders there, depression, job losses, and family crisis top reasons. 800,000 die globally through self-murder. That's according to WHO. And COVID-19 fears suicide cases in 2020. Government, parents, and clerics key to ending suicide. Then you have the infographics there on the front page illustrating the suicide stories. Buhari inaugurates Committee for Agenda 2050 Development Plan. That's page 4. 611 Nigerian teachers killed, 910 schools destroyed in 9 years. All right.
Kingsley, very, very, very gloomy stories you've told.
Those are the stories
yes,
that...
the issue with Nigerians committing suicide, well, I'm sure COVID-19 would have a greater role to play in that.
Well, they said COVID-19 fears suicide cases in 2020. That's for 2020, but the figures that they have put out here, those figures cover a 4-year period, indicating that depression, job losses, and family issues are top reasons. I recall on Good Morning Nigeria, we focused on suicide some years ago, and happily there have been fewer reports of, if you like, unfortunately, spectacular cases of suicide. Persons parking their vehicles on the Third Mainland Bridge, for instance, in Lagos, and then plunging headlong into the lagoon. It was pretty common at some point, and I think that was when we also focused on it. But suicide is a terrible thing, to happen to an individual, indeed to the family, and then to society.
The issue with the bandits that the VC of Uni Abuja raised is also quite worrisome, and I think it's a call to security, agencies, of course, to move into action before students resume academic studies and all that. Let's take a look at the stories on the front page of The Nation. Well, it's more political now. APC, PDP, and crossfire over petrol electricity rates hike. It comes with the rider. A ruling party accuses opposition of hypocrisy, and government risks people's anger. That's the story. But the main story, the picture story that you see, police arrest 270 criminal suspects in Kano, rescue 9 kidnapped victims. The picture story you're seeing right on the screen, those of the armed robbery suspects and the arms and ammunition recovered from them yesterday. And Kingsley, just take a look at them, also sporting the face mask. These are suspected armed robbers, with face mask. And one will be wondering.
Well, it's not unlikely that the police authorities gave them the face mask just to ensure that there's compliance with the COVID-19 protocols. Yes.
All right, just trending at the foot of the picture story, determination to salvage Edo and agric sector. Well, that's an editorial, I'm sorry. So, doctors, it's trending at the bottom. Striking doctors to be paid 4 billion naira allowance in 2 weeks. And Nigeria's debt rises to 31 trillion naira. All right. Okay, I have some other stories. Just above the nameplate, FBN, UBA, Sterling CEO, Squid NESG, that is Economic Summit Group, board over attack on CBN policies. Now, the Apex Bank is defending, of course, its programs. You can read up the details of that on page 3. Now, Oseni Aduku orders form North Central People's Forum. Again, read up the details on page 3. Ghana's killing shocks autumn. Soswang faults military action. Details of that on page 10. Kingsley.
All right. The editorial, of course, if there's nothing else to discuss on that, let's take the editorial from the Punch newspaper. It's at page 8. It says, cutting inexcusable losses at the seaports. The editorial says, in part, that there are no marks for guessing the inevitable outcome in terms of uninhibited congestion that bogs down clearing operations for about 30 days, necessitating diversion to ports in Benin Republic, Togo, and elsewhere, and that the absurd delays, according to the editorial, aggravated by the situation in terms of the operations at the ports. Says the shabby road infrastructure in and around Apapa has also exacerbated the economic predicament. But in fairness, according to the editorial, federal government has identified the problems. Unfortunately, it lacks the will to implement the solutions. More critically, the editorial says Nigeria should go modern by privatizing the ports. This is the global trend. Chinese investments have revived Greece's major port terminal. According to reports, China holds stakes in major European and American ports. And those names are also mentioned there. And as of 2006, the Dubai Ports World, that's a UAE company, had bought over 6 U.S. ports. And since it has been established that Nigeria is losing money on this venture, the Buhari government should privatize the ports, with the NPA and NAMA acting as regulators.
All right.
All right. Yeah, so that's the editorial, and that ends our newspaper review this morning. We'll take a short break now.
VTHE College Jos, an affiliate of Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, is currently admitting students for its ordinary diploma programs in television journalism, television production, and television engineering. Interested candidates are advised to obtain relevant information concerning eligibility at our website at www.ntatvc.edu.ng or marketing department of any NTA station nationwide. For further information, contact Assistant Director, Marketing, NTA TV College Jos on 0803-314-4383 or the Academic Office of the College on 0806-980-9807. Announcer, Registrar.
Like every mother, I'm worried about dangerous insects, especially mosquitoes, which spread diseases like malaria to my loved ones. This year, I'm not afraid. I'm using New Mortein Insta-Kill. New Mortein Insta-Kill's improved formulation knocks down mosquitoes 2 times faster. Not even a single mosquito is spared because even one mosquito bite can cause malaria. Mortein Insta knocks down mosquitoes 2 times faster.
Cadbury Hot Chocolate 3-in-1, the delicious combination of rich cocoa and wholesome goodness of milk. Just add hot water to get an instant chocolatey treat. Cadbury Hot Chocolate 3-in-1. Just add hot water.
Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Our focus this morning is on matters arising from the 57th session of the Authority of the ECOWAS Heads of State and Government. As a prompt for this discussion, let's listen to this report put together by our correspondent, Aisha Obali.
ECOWAS heads of state and government recently met in Niamey, Republic of Niger, for their 57th ordinary session. One of the most crucial meetings is a high-level meeting where heads of state meet to deliberate on challenges faced by the region. The meeting is a platform to demonstrate collective will of leaders in driving the regional agenda, among which is opening up economic frontiers and encouraging healthy competition among member states. The meeting, among others, took note of the presentation of the special report on COVID-19 in the region by President Muhammadu Buhari, who is also the ECOWAS champion on the fight against COVID-19, and special report on the ECOWAS Monetary Cooperation Program. While commending the quality of the report, which revealed how the recommendations will assist in deepening the economic and monetary integration process, consolidating political stability, peace and security within the region, as well as the protocol of free movement of persons and goods. The meeting deliberated on a broad number of other issues, including international cooperation, the creation of a monetary union, with a major step taken to inaugurate the ministerial committee on a single currency, among other key decisions.
All right, that background report was put together by our correspondent Aisha. Many thanks to you. Quickly, let's welcome all our guests. All settle down for the conversation. Joining us via Zoom, Minister of Health, Dr. Osage Ehanire. Honorable Minister, thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear now, just a slight delay. Can you hear us, Honorable Minister? To you. Let me also introduce our other guests here. We have here in our Abuja studio, Honorable Minister of State Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Zubairu Dada. Thank you very much for joining the program.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right. Also here with us in the studios, we'd like to welcome Paul Ejime. He's an international affairs expert and a consultant with ECOWAS and the EU on peace and security communications. Paul, pleasure to have you with us on the program this
Thank you very much.
Okay. And also here with us, the studios, a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria, Dr. Ken Ukoha, who is President, National Association of Nigerian Traders. Dr. Ukoha, delighted to have you with us this morning.
Thank you very much, Kinsley.
Okay. All right, so let's begin the conversation with the Honorable Minister of State Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Zubairu Dada. The 57th ordinary session of the authority of the ECOWAS heads of states and government ended in Niamey, Republic of Niger. Very significant conclusions arising from that summit. But from your perspective, what were the high points of that summit?
Well, once more, thank you so very much for this opportunity to join the conversation. As you are very much aware, the summit ended in Niamey, and by our estimation, it was a huge success, especially as the authority of heads of state, came to some conclusions on some very, what if you like, key issues concerning the region, especially in the areas of the collective fight against COVID-19 and its impact on the region, matters of security and insurgency within the region, and of course the fallouts of COVID-19 on the economy, especially of the region, and how to collectively address these issues. And of course, as you would expect, the matter of the overthrow of the electoral regime, government in Mali, and the resolve to ensure that the military junta, handed over power to civil authority, if you like, in the shortest possible time, and a host of other minor issues, but of course also key to the region and its development, but particularly in the areas of peace and security.
you have described, the whole event as a success, but I'd just like for the Honorable Minister to break it down for us from Nigeria's perspective in terms of gains. In what context are you using success?
Well, if you take a look, for example, at the issue of security, the collective resolve of the region, or if you like, the authority of heads of state, to pool resources to fight this menace collectively as a region. And of course, Nigeria, the economy, the political situation, if you like, the security situation in which we are, the insurgency, the influx of insurgents from those other parts of the northern parts of the country, through Mali and the rest of them, and the collective resolve to fight together to ensure that we put a stop to the menace. I guess that in itself says volumes about what you may consider as something of benefit to Nigeria, because it's not a war that we can fight alone. We believe that there is a need for us to collectively fight these insurgents together. And that resolve in itself, as far as I'm concerned, is a gain for Nigeria. But of course, it's not as if we are the only beneficiaries. I believe it's in our best interest. And of course, talk about also the issue of Mali and the overthrow of the regime, and the collective resolve to ensure that we entrench democracy by letting the regime know that Africa, or if you like, the region, will not accept an overthrow, an illegal overthrow of any regime, of a government duly elected. I believe that in itself is also a positive.
In terms of for deepening integration, with regards to trade and all that, would you also say we were successful?
Well, yes, because you see, it's a win-win situation as far as I'm concerned, because come to think of it, Nigeria has the largest market in the entire region. And I therefore believe that anything that will address matters that hinder trade and and issues of economic development or economic integration is going to be a minus for Nigeria. And therefore, anything that addresses such matters collectively is a positive one.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister of State. We're trying to see. All right. We understand that we're still trying to restore the connection to Dr. Osage and the Honorable Minister of Health to get his own perspective. Paul Ejime, when I start bringing you in at this stage, what's your evaluation of the conclusions of the 57th Ordinary Session of the Heads of State and Government Summit?
Well, thank you again. There were some key issues like the Honorable Minister of State for Foreign Affairs mentioned. In fact, looking at the communique, it has some 52 paragraphs of, issues. And you want to commend heads of state, of course, ministers and their, technical people, experts had worked on them. But sticking out, we talked about integration, we talked about Mali, and the fact that there is also a change of guards. Ghana, the president of Ghana is now the new chairman of Heads of Authority. And perhaps, if you remember, Claire was talking about what is the need for Nigeria. Perhaps it's another way for him, an opportunity to wave the olive branch to his brother president of Nigeria, that there is no need for the diplomatic fallout that was going to happen in terms of the treatment of traders or the shutting of borders. I think there is the two countries are talking now, instead of issuing statements above, talking at cross purposes. I think now perhaps the president of Ghana, with this responsibility, he can now think more as a regional leader and not national. So that is one. And the issue in Mali. Okay.
Just before we'll let you tick off the other significant issues arising from the summit, our engineers have informed us that the connection to the Honorable Minister of Health has been restored. You can see him there on the right side of your screen.
Okay.
We don't want to, let's just take the opportunity of getting the minister's own views before we lose the connection again, assuming it remains unstable. Honorable Minister, Dr. Sage Onere, once again, I'd like to have you on Good Morning Nigeria. President Muhammadu Buhari delivered a report on the COVID-19 situation in the sub-region. Of course, Nigeria being the most populous country in the sub-region, this would have also been very important. But lead us into the significance of what President Muhammadu Buhari's report meant to his brother heads of state and government, and then the conclusions arising from their consideration of the report.
Okay, thank you very much, Kesley, and good morning. In April, the process to appoint President Muhammadu Buhari as COVID-19 champion for the region, and in that capacity, 3 committees were set up. Ministerial committees, one for health and one for transportation and the other for trade. So these committees bet the health sector in itself approach to COVID-19. The demographics are similar, and they were able to compare notes, and the reports that we gave to the president contained ways in which West African countries can work together and support each other in and use the opportunities arising here to improve relations, and above all also to be able to receive materials which we got from outside, have been purchased by the West African Health Organization, and distribute them. And the protocol for easing border restrictions was also discussed. The ways in which we can do laboratory tests in various countries in accredited laboratories that will be valid for entry into another country, and generally how to improve relations among West African states.
Dr. Hanire, I going through the communique, most of the resolutions, centered around COVID-19 pandemic, how COVID-19 pandemic, has affected either one item on the protocol list, on the integration process, or the other. For you, leading the response from Nigeria, what would you consider as the most important positive step that the summit took with regards to regional response?
To see each other's strength. And of course, health is supposed to include everything else, including movement across borders. And if any other country were to call for help with materials, for example, test kits or for PPEs, we could be able to respond rapidly. And the opportunity to share in materials that came in, laboratory diagnostic equipment, PCR machines, those ones were discussed and distributed. But the main thrust of it was the combined response to the threat of COVID-19 in the region, and how to protect ourselves, and also look at opportunities for procuring vaccines when these are available. And the issue of cross-border infection, which is the proper care that every country took for its own territory.
Well, I'll stay with you, Dr. Ayonire, on the issue of cross-border infection. We know that Nigeria, of course, has reopened its airspace to international flights, and there is no indication just yet as to whether flights from the West African countries are restricted from flying in, from coming into the country. Now, earlier you were talking about accreditation of laboratories for testing prior, of course, to the departure from a country of origin. How does the aspect of that conclusion of the heads of state summit impact our own COVID-19 protocols, of which you, of course, a very significant part, a player? Are we satisfied, for instance, that neighboring countries will maintain the same level of vigilance, the same level of screening of passengers departing their territory? I'm asking this question against the background of our experience. About 6 years ago, when Patrick Sawyer took off from Monrovia in Liberia, and they had Ebola, and it landed in Lagos, and then the entire country, that's to say Nigeria, went into panic mode. So what is the level of our satisfaction with this particular conclusion?
West Africa, known as WAHO, that every passenger boarding an aircraft should have a test done, and must be negative for COVID-19. That test must have been done within 96 hours of departure. That means the sample must have been taken within 96 hours, preferably within 72 hours, so that when they board an aircraft first, they make sure that all other passengers are protected. There is no person who is boarding COVID positive. Secondly, you do not have the opportunity of transporting or importing COVID-19 across the border into another country. So these protocols were arranged upon, agreed upon, both for West Africa air travel and also for international air travel. They are very clearly stated. The list of accredited laboratories in all countries were shared, and the West African Health Organization is in custody of that list, and it was distributed. So the risk of importation from any West African countries is, let us say, practically the same, perhaps even less if you are to imagine that we are truer to each other than importation from some other foreign country.
Okay, Doug, Kingsley's question may probably become, well, our airspace is partially, temporarily, partially open now. So that would, of course, would have addressed that aspect. But the question Kingsley asks will probably become more relevant with our land borders, and his concern, or our concern about, cross-border transmission becomes more pertinent at this juncture. So can you relate the outcome from the summit to his concerns about this aspect of the international relations or regional relations, if you may?
Yes, you are talking about the land borders, which is quite correct. Delicate subject, but it's reason for us to know that traditionally there's been a lot of uncontrolled movement across the borders, across land borders. But what we agreed upon is that all countries should try to restrict movement across borders now when land borders open to official border posts, and that all measures be taken to carry out at least physical checks of those who are crossing the borders, the check of temperature and other parameters that are suggestive or evocative of COVID-19. That would clearly be done with port health by port health services. But we would have liked, of course, a situation where there is a COVID test being done. If it were practicable, that is what will be done. But it's a complex issue with land borders, where land borders actually cut through communities in some areas that are very keen to each other.
The issue of a COVID-19 vaccine also came up at the summit. From your experience, what are the prospects of regional cooperation and collaboration in the search for a COVID-19 vaccine?
Well, you know that the West African Health Organization coordinates health activities and policies across Africa. And the prospect of vaccine is what we discussed on that platform. We are carrying out our own research. We are here. Nigerian Institute of Medical Research announced the other day that they are working on the proteins on the protein on the COVID-19 spike to be able to reconstruct the antigen in there, to clone the antigen. That is a step towards creating, working on creating a vaccine. But there are countries that are probably way ahead of us and who are going to produce the vaccine. Some of these countries have made it very clear that they are only going to supply their own persons first and take care of others or even friends later. So we are casting our own net wide. We are working with the World Health Organization and Gavi on a program that will assure us and other lower and lower medium income countries that we get access to vaccines. We are also watching other countries who have gone very far in their investigations into creating a vaccine. China and India are working on it. The Chinese government did say at one point that we will be able to consider Africa when they have developed their vaccines. And a few days ago, we had a conversation with the ambassador of Russia, who provided us with a memoir and spoke with actual scientists. Nigerian scientists had the opportunity to also ask him how far they have gone in their vaccination and the prospects of being able to let us participate in their vaccines if it is successful. They are in the third phase of clinical trial. So we are casting our net wide, looking at all areas where we'll be able to have access to vaccines for our citizens if and when they become available, provided they are safe and they are approved by our scientists and our regulatory organs here at home.
Before we come back to our studio, still on the issue of vaccine, President Muhammadu Buhari, of course, said it, African solutions for African problems. With regards to this summit and the outcomes, what are we focused on in terms of vaccine? Are we looking at an ECOWAS, a regional ECOWAS production of its own vaccine? Are we looking out to others, who have already developed the vaccine to acquire? And if that is what we are doing, I'm aware that some other wealthy countries, more wealthy countries, have already booked. So are we sure that we will have access to, those vaccines on time to administer to our people?
Well, we are doing in some of them, we are not yet that advanced. But we are working, our scientists are working well, our institutes of medical research working on that. But the West African approach is that, of course, it has to be led by certain countries, generally to be Nigeria and then also Senegal, Dakar. They have research in that area too. So it's generally one or two or three countries driving the initiative for the West African sub-region. But we are looking at every other country that has potential to produce this vaccine, talking with them, those who have gone far in it. We don't leave any stone unturned. Even our traditional healers who come to us to say that they have the answer, we listen to them. We send whatever concoctions they bring in for testing. So the option of obtaining vaccines that are proven to be safe and effective is what we take very seriously, and we explore always to make sure that these vaccines will be available to us, even if not from one source, from multiple sources.
All right, Dr. Usagi Adere, thank you very much. We're going to have to pause you, but we do hope that when we return, that the demons that have troubled our connection with you will also have gone to sleep and then not interfere with our transmission. So let's return to our studios and then come back to our guests. We haven't had a word yet from Dr. Ken Okoha. Dr. Ken Okoha, the summit was also heavy in terms of conclusions on economic issues. And one of the issues I know that you are very passionate about has to do with economic integration. And the key element of that also has to do with the currency. And there were a number of concerns that were raised. What's your assessment of the conversations around integration and more particularly the eco currency?
Thank you very much, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigerians, once again. I think the outcome of the summit with regard to the integration process, and particularly with regard to the economic integration of West Africa, for me, lays a little bit of concern. One, with regard to the eco-currency in particular, I recall that right here in this particular studio, we had discussions when the heads of states took a decision to adopt ECO as a currency for West Africa, for ECOWAS. And suddenly, from nowhere, we also saw one of their peers, one of their colleagues, the president of Cote d'Ivoire, Ouattara, who came up right before Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, and announced that UEMOA has adopted ECO, the same currency, as a substitution for CFA. And that took some of us, unawares. That took some of us surprised, because I, for one, I couldn't understand whether it was the platform of UEMOA or ECOWAS that was deciding on the ECO currency. And as we have it today, the ECO currency has been on for decades. And this is an instrument meant for the integration of the West African region. And it has a lot of things that we need to learn from. Take, for instance, what is happening in Europe, where Euro became the currency. And of course, all of us know what happened to Greece. And Germany became the burden bearer. And none of them have come out from it till this moment. And that's why we called for some kind of a reflection for Nigeria. And I think that I must also give it up to Nigeria, because Nigeria also had to arrange a meeting, organize a meeting immediately with the Anglophones, and Guinea, I recall, joined in that meeting, where they also refuted that. They stood against that, pronouncement by the minister, the president of Cote d'Ivoire. But surprisingly, I also saw in the communique of the 57th summit that nothing was said against that pronouncement. That's number one. Number two, it appears that the authority of heads of states were also going in line with the ECO currency. But the only deviation is that they are laying out again the importance, they need to move back to the criteria, which is okay. But let us call this spade a spade. Who is ECO for? Now, going beyond the issue of the ECO currency, that's one. Two is the subject of trade integration in West Africa. There is a paragraph there that commended, the Ghanaian president, the Ghanaian people, for giving a secretariat for the AFCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And it was commended. But I didn't see anything that was to, advise Ghana at the same time that you cannot be providing a secretariat and serving as a secretariat of Africa for trade on one hand, and on the other hand, be chasing away Africans from your own domain. I didn't see that come up. The third one is regards to this issue of resource mobilization, which is key for integration process. Now, Kingsley, in ECOWAS, we have 15 commissioners with their bogus paraphernalia of office, executive assistants and all of that, as against the earlier decision of 9 commissioners. In the African Union, you have only 6. But here in ECOWAS, we have 15. And in fact, many of them are trying to also lobbying to return. And I asked myself, do we need 15? Especially now, you heard from the Honorable Minister of, Health. The West African region is purging in terms of resources that are not available. Nigeria is showing a lot of responsibility. Most of these countries are not paying their community levies. Nigeria is paying. Although Nigeria had to, stylishly withhold certain part of their, community levy contributions. However, that has not changed the, approach of many other countries. Many of them are still not paying. How are we now guaranteeing the continuation, the sustainability of 15 ECOWAS commissioners, which permit my use of language, which are budget eaters? And today, you cannot lay hands on any project in ECOWAS that will say this is a regional project. This is a rail line, for instance, that cuts across Nigeria, Togo, Nigeria, Benin Republic, Togo, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Burkina Faso. That's not like that.
There's one in progress that goes through the GBR.
That's Nigeria. That's Nigeria, not ECOWAS. I am talking of regional project that is implemented by ECOWAS. So the funds are not there. Our regional integration process has a problem.
The points you have made are noted, but maybe you wish to revise part of your last statement that there is no regional project. Now there is a ECOWAS highway, and I know that the ministers of works usually would gather around, and each of the countries, of course, is supposed to take care of its own segment. I think it cuts across West Africa.
I totally agree with you, but please, what I'm talking about is there is no ECOWAS-funded project.
All right.
The funds there, are incapacitated.
And as you are saying, are being used for recurrent
expenditure, administrative
15
purposes.
commissioners.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay,
we don't have that capacity.
Let's bring the Honorable Minister of State for Foreign Affairs. Sorry, let me just ask you, following from his response. One, I'm going to ask you a question on the issue of the currency, the convergence criteria. I think it was at the 56th session that the immediate past chairman, made a statement that, look, countries that have met the convergence criteria could go ahead and, transit to adopt the ECO. And at this session, the communique has said, look, why don't we go on a gradual, transition? What exactly is the summit's position on that? And two, those countries, those UMF countries that have already, transited or adopted the ECO, what is the session's decision on their situation?
Let me start from the last question. If you recall, President Ouattara had to literally eat his words at this summit when he said what happened, that time was actually within the same context of the ECOWAS's position on the matter of ECO, and that they were not at all at cross purposes with the position of ECOWAS. In other words, and of course, the fact that with the impact of COVID-19 on the economy of not only West Africa but the world, the reality has dawned on all of them, or on all of us, that we need to give it time, because none of the countries, whether Francophone or Anglophone, has actually satisfied the criteria. And for that reason, they came to this reality came, very clear to all of us, that we just have to take it gradually.
Is it gradual or is it on hold until every member?
It's gradual. The intention being that each member will also, of course, continue to make efforts to satisfy those basic, those convergence criteria, so that at some point, and of course, depending on the economy of individual nations, at some point, I believe we'll come to an understanding that yes, we have satisfied so many of these criteria, and that we are now good to go. But as it is now, none of the countries, none. Some, of course, have done better than others, but none of them has satisfied the criteria.
But
and Nigeria's position.
But the Francophone has relatively, they already had a common currency, since
that's the CFA. That's the CFA. But of course, the matter of the ECO has been put on hold. That is actually the conclusion, that it has been put on hold until such a time that until such a time that all of us are ready and satisfied that we are good to go.
Okay. I think, Honorable Minister of State, you also wanted to respond to some other issues that came before the issue of eco.
Yeah, talking about, I think you partly responded, regional projects. I don't know if you've had access to the documents. I'm not speaking for ECOWAS, but I'm aware that there are these projects that are in the pipeline. Again, the same problem of lack of funds. But if you recall, I don't know if you also read my president's statement, where he said there was a need for ECOWAS to engage more on, projects that will touch the lives of, members of member nations or member states. And therefore, the call by our president for ECOWAS to focus more. And that is why we're talking about ECOWAS of the people. All right? So that, let's come up with more projects that will, touch the lives of the ordinary members of this community. So yes, there may not be enough projects on the ground as such, but there are certainly lots and lots of plans for a lot of these projects to take off, funds, of course, being available. But don't forget, these are capital-intensive projects.
But this will be, as Ken is proposing, this will be ECOWAS-funded projects.
They will be ECOWAS-funded projects.
ECOWAS-funded projects. But there's also a point that Dr. Okoha raised, and I would like you to respond to this. He says, in terms of further trade integration and promotion, the location of the headquarters of the African Free Continental Trade Area in Accra came up, but in his view, he seemed not satisfied that there appeared to be no clause advising. That should be, I believe that's the diplomatese, advising the host of the Secretariat against what some persons have described as some cloaked xenophobia against other Africans who are doing business in that environment. Was that an omission, or in terms of drafting a communique, ordinarily that shouldn't be there? Or was that an omission?
But you see, maybe because the matter actually didn't come up in the manner that you are putting it. I mean, nobody challenged, Ghana on matters such as this, because I believe the decision as to where the capital was to be located had since been taken. And therefore it is granted that Ghana is ready to receive, Africa. And that is why, the headquarters was put in Ghana. But what matters now is for us to now, I guess, that, in fact, their acceptance to even host that body in Ghana should throw a challenge at them to realize the fact that, of course, you cannot be hosting such an important body that is supposed to bring Africa, the entire Africa together, and yet discriminate against Africans.
That's what he's saying. There was no advice to Ghana on this very matter.
You mean during the summit?
Yes.
Because it was not tabled. I'm not aware that it was tabled.
But whose responsibility, Honorable Minister, was it to
member nations, member states?
This is because it is a Nigeria-Ghana matter. We would have expected, or Nigerians would have expected, that the tabling should have come from Nigeria.
Exactly.
Well, it didn't. It didn't, and therefore, if that was an oversight, so let it be. But the fact is that it never arose, and that is because also we're also talking with Ghana. Okay. We're already talking, if you recall. The president of Ghana sent a delegation, a high-powered one at that, with 3 ministers and the director general, whatever it is, of their equivalent of NIPC, Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission, and a host of other officials came here, and we had very useful discussions with them, along with Minister of Information, Minister of Trade and Industry, and my humble self. We had some, like I said, very, very useful discussions. The fact remains, of course, that the law that we're talking about in Ghana does not single out Nigerians. It says it's protecting, the interests of Ghanaian traders. Local industries. And therefore, sometimes yes, it affects Nigerians,
yes.
And Nigerians are there in huge numbers.
Our concern is that it keeps repeating. They keep going back and forth.
And that is precisely...
We have a conversation, and then the next few months,
Don't forget also that the Honourable Speaker, the Right Honourable Speaker of the House of Reps, of our House of Reps, led a delegation of legislators to Ghana, all in an effort to see how it is that we can come together and address this thorny issue once and for all. And I believe, collectively, that is looking at it from the point of the legislature and the executive, combined, we believe that very soon we should be able to address this matter holistically.
Okay. Well, the points that you have outlined, Honourable Minister, the points are noted. Incidentally, on Good Morning Nigeria, we have discussed the treatment of Nigerian traders in Ghana on a number of occasions. I was just wondering, the summit duration and other activities permit any sideline interaction between our own head of state and the Ghanaian president?
If there were any side... no, this time around, no, unfortunately. Because it was a one-day affair. Our president came in the morning and left later in the evening. And I think most of them also did the same. There wasn't enough time for that. But like I said, they're already talking on phone and other means of communication. And therefore, we're talking.
All right. Thank you very much. Paul, sorry, we paused you for a very long time, so we are releasing the pause button now from where you stopped in terms of your evaluation of the conclusions of the summit.
Well, already, let me play the the moderator between the private sector and then government here. The Honourable Minister is spoken as a diplomat. And Dr. Ken also spoke from somebody like, from the private sector. You can see the emotion that he brings to it. That is what a cohort of people is supposed to do, not a cohort of state or a cohort of heads of state. So part of it, let me, they have already highlighted it. Let me start from where the Honourable Minister stopped. It is the lack of, deliberate effort to deal with the issue concerning Ghana and Nigeria that had allowed it to get to fester to this level. And your question was germane. Why was it not raised? And that is where Nigeria should take a blame. I mean Nigerian, but where you have to mention issues, you have to mention issues. It's because it has not been dealt with to the level that to put an end to it. If, for instance, this level of discussion that is going on, if such had happened before, I don't think we'll be where we are. Because somebody needs to put the issue on the agenda. Nigeria didn't do that.
Ukoha will give us more historical,
into it. Yes. But we are talking about fallout from the summit.
Yes.
It was not there. That was why it was not discussed. Okay. And so that will continue. Now, he mentioned the issue of commissioners, so we don't leave it to him. That is some of the institutional malay that is, bedeviling ECOWAS that needs to be. You are looking for money. You don't spend money on, top-heavy, management. I think they need to look at that. It has been raised before, but for some reason, they went from 9 commissioners to 15. That is revenue guzzling. It doesn't add anything, and so they have to look at it again. Now, you are talking about the other issues that came out. The point about Mali, the summit gave what sounded like an ultimatum to the junta in Mali to between now and 15th of September to name a civilian president and a prime minister. And then they should do everything within 12 months. And I'm saying ECOWAS should make haste slowly.
Thank you.
And then listen to the people of Mali.
Thank you.
I haven't seen a reference made to, there used to be a very important and influential Malian, the former president Alpha Konaré. He headed ECOWAS, he was several times chairperson of ECOWAS Authority of States. And then he went ahead to go and head the AU. He was the first AU chairperson for so many, and for some reason that one leader that he served for one term. And when they asked him to, come over like Mandela, he said no. That was the kind of character of leadership that and I know he's still alive. When they are now talking about trying to solve the problem, the conflict in Mali, I think those are the type of people that ECOWAS should be engaging. Because having served as a president for that country and then headed the AU, he has something that he can bring. I'm talking about stakeholder engagement. I think that is what is required rather than ultimatum, because it will sound as if ECOWAS is talking from over the head of Malians, but instead it should engage the
I'd like you to clarify that, please, yes. Because you say you would want ECOWAS to listen to the people of Mali.
Yes. In
what way? In what context? Because allowing the military junta to even stay, within this period, is contrary to constitutional provisions of democratic governance.
But it became inevitable. Remember that ECOWAS was even negotiating through former president. In fact, he had gone to brief President Muhammadu Buhari when the military struck. It means that engagement did not succeed. And what it means, look at the support, if you may call it, of what the takeover has brought. You saw the jubilation on the Malian street. ECOWAS was there talking about reinstatement of somebody that eventually resigned by his, it means that they are not feeling the pulse of Malians on the ground. And, well, you can say, what can they do from outside? But they need to do that often, engage with stakeholders. There's the M5, they've talked with them. The junta is now consulting with them and political parties, and then also consolidating. So they need to work with them. You can use what you call the carrot and stick. Just don't make them too comfortable. Bring pressure. But don't make a pressure that will break the pot. Give them the pressure that is enough to make them see that nobody has appetite for military regime. They belong to the barracks.
Yeah, Paul.
Yes.
Let's explore some other issues further.
Yes.
The summit that's just ended in Niamey commended the mediation and conciliation efforts of former President Goodluck Jonathan. Yes. President Goodluck Jonathan took a number of flights to Bamako to meet with all the parties. And he was an external person, so to speak. And now you're saying that, okay, there are internal stakeholders. You mentioned the former president. Sometimes when you need to intercede, persons will say, let's look for a neutral person who has no interest in the power equation in the country. So that's one point. Goodluck Jonathan, Nigeria's former president, was commended for that particular purpose. Yes. And now there is also, if you like, an ideological abhorrence of military regimes on the African continent, more particularly so in West Africa. Yes. And if we had had a breach of that, it said the former President Keita decided to resign. He didn't resign voluntarily. If you placed a gun to his head and maybe the video didn't show you that there was a gun placed to his head and he resigned, could that have been voluntary? You also make the point that you have seen jubilant Malians on the streets. Well, democracies that are maturing, particularly in West Africa, I would recall that when there used to be military coups, people would be jubilating on the streets until they then started seeing the adverse consequences of military rule. What's your reaction?
No, it is being able to reconcile. It's external intervention with internal local dynamics. That's what I'm talking about. I think ECOWAS should be commended. By the way, it's not the first time that former President Jonathan will mediate on Mali. As president, he was there from 2012, 2013 to even 2015. So he's not a stranger there. So, but what we are saying...
But he has no personal interest.
No, I'm not saying, you know, it's not against his person. What I'm talking about is those who... He's a messenger, by the way. It is the ECOWAS strategy that I'm talking about that does not seem to be working or that needs to be recalibrated so that you do not lose relevance. Because if now you get to a situation where ECOWAS will become an anathema, will become an enemy in Mali, you don't want to see that. You must be seen to be giving with the people.
Again, I'm sorry, we're having a conversation before we bring in the other guests.
Yes.
Did ECOWAS, by intervening successfully in Burkina Faso, then become an enemy of the Burkinabes?
No, but what we are saying is that these people had asked. No, I'm not rationalizing. I'm not trying to, say that
the action
justify the military.
Your point is against the deadline that they have issued.
No, I'm saying
they should have asked them to say, okay.
No. It's not forever.
Yes.
I have said make haste slowly. I haven't said. Ask them to pack and go.
Paul, make haste slowly, yes, but nevertheless, make haste.
Exactly.
So what is the definition of that haste?
It is, if you give somebody deadline, can we bet that deadline of 15th September might not be realistic? That is the point we are making. Are we going to be? I use this word very advisedly. Yes. Are you therefore, yes, by what you are suggesting, calling for a bet? I'm not a gambler, so I will get into that. Okay.
Are we therefore seeking to encourage recalcitrance on the part of those who have usurped the constitutional authority in their country?
No, by no means. That is why I have said that you use carrot and stick. Carrot means you can give the carrot, but when you need now to strike, you strike. ECOWAS has suspended Mali. There are sanctions ongoing that will soon be having effect. These are some areas. So
those are the stick. The carrot is due between, we give you this deadline, timeline.
No, but we have to be realistic and pragmatic.
Let's put you on the Dr. Okoha.
I think the fact is that ECOWAS could not have just sat back and watched, like you rightly put it, yes, usurpation of power, by the military. We don't want to see a situation like that repeating itself in other parts of other countries in the region, and therefore they must be told in very clear terms. And wherever we have other soldiers, maybe wanting to cash on such small developments within the countries to take over power. We cannot watch that happen. And ECOWAS must also give some deadlines for them to know that, yes, we mean business. Of course, it's in the interest of the people of Mali that the government, that ECOWAS said, okay, we now, respect the opinions of the people of Mali, and that's why we're saying, okay, we allow you go ahead, but it must be under the leadership of a civilian, not the military.
Okay, Honorable Minister, let's bring Dr. Kenukoha. I know you want to react to the issues
Honestly,
that have, yes, you want to say this, but please take it along with you. I don't know how much time we do have. The president, that's President Muhammadu Buhari, talked about elongation of tenure.
Thank you.
And I'd like you to speak to, did it sync with, members? And secondly, Paul here commended, of course, with ECOWAS, commending the new chairperson, that's in the person of the president of Ghana. And he has just a couple of months, to their election.
Did he commend him?
No, I didn't.
Yes, right. You were
I was saying
congratulating him.
That he should play a regional role.
No,
I think it wasn't.
You said it was a landmark. It was one of the high points of the decision taken.
Okay,
so,
that's true.
Dr. Kedukoha, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Honestly, let me start with the Mali subject. And I think we need to be very careful. I totally align myself with Paul's intervention, and I want to explain this very clearly. One is that nobody is asking or commending intervention of the military by any means in any governance. Mark that, underline it. However, I also want us to be a little bit circumspect here. Number one, for Nigeria. Now, with the issue of deadline, on the 15th of September, if nothing happens, what happens? Who will come?
Yes. More will follow.
Thank you. More will follow.
Yes.
But my point is this. Can I land?
There's a standby force.
Yeah, can I land?
Yes.
Who are the owners of the standby force? Nigeria is going to be looked at. Let's be very careful. We don't have fronts. And we are also marching towards that end. Let's be watchful. Number two, I just put that on the sideline. But the most important thing that we need to look at is, as we are today, there are people who are taking over power by squashing constitutional laid down procedures to elongate power. And I must be very frank and brutal here. And I hope you don't mind. Look at Côte d'Ivoire. The president of Côte d'Ivoire just, by all means, changed the constitution to allow him to run for third term. The same thing happened in Guinea. And they are coming out of the 5 countries in Africa, in West Africa, that are having election this year. These 2 have changed the constitution by all means to serve their own whims and caprices. What do you call that? Is that part of the... Can I land?
Yeah, no, you're asking a rhetorical question.
Very important question.
I would like you to be guided by the following proposition. There are 2 issues. The usurpation of constitutional authority in Mali by the military, which the ECOWAS heads of state and government are dealing with, and they have issued a deadline. That's one matter. Second matter has to do with the tenure elongation, against which our own president spoke at the summit. And he said that, look, do not precipitate crisis by seeking to elongate your tenure. There are slightly two different issues.
I wanted to link them.
Yeah, you will link them. Even then, there is some silver lining from the fact that you are having 5 countries conduct their governors, I was going to say governorship, presidential elections this year. There's some silver lining. We will discuss that. But so let's separate them. They may be related. The Mali coup has been condemned. They say, look, hand over to a civilian transition or interim administration by the 15th of September. What should be done if they miss that deadline? Second one has to do with elongation of tenure through the manipulation of the country's constitutions, namely Côte d'Ivoire and Guinea.
Now, the link is this.
Yes.
We are having a vision, an ECOWAS vision 2020, which talks about, and its strategic objective is transforming from an ECOWAS of member states to an ECOWAS of people. Now, the question we have in our hands begging for answer is, when you by all means change the constitution, is it for the people? That's one. 2, whether you move with the gun or move with the pen, is it not the same constitution that you have changed to perpetuate yourself? That's 2. But the most important thing as for Mali is the sanction on Mali. Who is that sanction on? Is it on these coupists? And I disagree. It is rather on the citizens, on the poor citizens of Mali, who have been excruciating under serious tension and security problem for a long time. We need to be a bit careful. That's why I say we need to apply some
Honorable Minister, let's pause you. Ken Ukoha, there are a number of issues that are coming up. And a very interesting conversation. You are asking who gets hurt by sanctions. Let me remind you, and perhaps our viewers, During the apartheid era.
Jurisprudence is changing.
No, we're talking about, no, it's not jurisprudence. We're talking about effect, not jurisprudence. Not jurisprudence. You can talk about diminished sovereignty in terms of international law jurisprudence. During the apartheid era, and sanctions were being imposed on apartheid South Africa, the argument of P.W. Botha, who was apartheid
I'm happy you are bringing this.
president, F.W. de Klerk, of course, took over from him. Pig Botha was the foreign minister and all that. The constant argument was that it is the poor people that were being hurt by the sanctions. But sanctions worked.
They did.
And these are sanctions against the regime, not targeted at the Malian people.
Because it's
Ambassador.
The sanctions are very clear. They said we said sanctions will not affect drugs or medication, food, fuel. These are basic needs of the ordinary folks in Mali. So the sanctions are actually targeted at the junta, not at the people of Mali.
Okay.
And if there are any aspects of the sanctions,
no, maybe Paul wants to lend his support.
Okay, thank you.
You know why?
Dr. Ken, you still have an
yes, an outstanding point.
Do you know why the Mali situation is very complex and complicated? Do you know we have between 13,000 and 15,000 UN peacekeeping forces in Mali?
Yes.
That are spending over $1.1 billion US
at the northern fringes
for 1 year. France has about 5,000 troops under the Macan force, spending over 800 million. These are human and capital investments that are there. And so you can talk about sanctions, like you said. Of course, when it goes with a lot of other things, it can work. Mrs. Thatcher was against it, US was against it, but Africa, I remember the Commonwealth, the foreign affairs, even, Nigeria here had people contributing towards the South African Relief Fund.
Yes.
Nigeria had some other countries also had South Africans who were given scholarship. Those of them that are leading there now. That's why one is also wondering about the xenophobia. That's another issue. So it's not just mere sanctions. It has to go with substantive and effective actions. Because if you say sanctions, like you said, it's not going to have an impact on some of this. What can have impact on sanctions is the the West African Central Bank Governors Association that is based in Dakar. When they freeze the flow of resources, that is where banks in Mali will run dry, and that is when, and nobody will know what in fact, the typical Malians, I don't know who their anger will be against, whether it will be against the junta or against those who impose the sanctions. And so that is why I was asking for, caution. So that is where that goes. So Mali is a complicated issue. You are not going to march in now, how many number of soldiers are you now going to bring compared to what is already there?
Paul,
yes.
Thanks a lot for your intervention.
Yes.
But you keep raising the military option, which has not even been proposed by the authority of the heads of states and government in ECOWAS. You're talking about that will be escalation of sanctions, but that hasn't arisen. Or if there's a breakdown, and from what we have seen, even in terms of peacekeeping or peace enforcement, you already have UN. You already have UN troops. You already have French troops. Is ECOWAS now going to say we're going to piggyback on those ones? You also have to consider several other factors. The ECOWAS heads of state have not said that the military option is the first. Honorable Minister of State.
No, as far as I'm concerned, he's suggesting slowly sort of approach, which is precisely what ECOWAS is doing, taking it easy, softly, because, like I said, the intention is not to hurt the people of Mali, but to ensure that, we bring back some, constitutional order.
Yes, just before we take our break, Dr. Ken Uha will respond to the last question, but I'm even wondering what's special about, different about Mali in terms of application of sanctions. Are we saying sanctions is no longer applicable as a tool, in an international...
It's applicable. It is applicable, but again, there is a jurisprudence that is also changing the dynamics of all of this now as it is. looking at it from the angle of the rights of people, the human rights of the people you are sanctioning, because they are not the ones that committed the crime, and you are sanctioning them from another means. This is changing. But on a footnote,
I see.
What happened in Zimbabwe?
It's genuine, and Iran is under sanctions. It's genuine, and Russians are under sanctions. It's genuine, North Korea is under sanctions. I don't know. What is the jurisprudence?
Can I tell you this?
Yes,
Zimbabwe. Something happened in Zimbabwe. Robert Mugabe was moved. Was that a coup? Nobody is talking, nobody is sanctioning that these people did the right thing. But what we're saying is, the people must be put in mind. And my own is, Nigeria should be a bit cautious, because all eyes are on Nigeria.
Okay, can you quickly take the last question? We want to take our break now.
On
Dr.
Ghana.
Okoha, yes.
You know, I was a bit worried also that the Ghanaian president was elected as the chair of ECOWAS Authority of Heads of States. And this is a man that is going into election by December. And he has been elected for 1 year. Supposing he's not being elected by his people, what happens? And I thought that the heads of states would have also been a bit circumspect. You don't elect somebody who is going into an election.
So they are being preemptive.
That's a bit, it appears that, look, they have decided, the heads of state have decided that this man must win his election at home. Come what may.
You see,
that's a bit cautious.
Let's listen to the
we must
minister.
make a distinction between the person and the nation that he represents.
Yes.
He was not elected as an individual. Yeah. He was elected to represent his country.
Yes.
As Ghana. Right. Whoever emerges president will automatically
we'll carry it.
We've never had a president anyway.
And by the way,
there doesn't have to be any precedence.
Okay.
It's simple and straightforward.
All right, gentlemen, let's come back. We'll take a short break now. When we come back, we'll continue with our part 2 of this conversation. Don't go away.
A new edition of TV Guide is out, featuring great personalities from all walks of life. Expository interview with a young TV presenter who shows passion on what she does, Morayo Afolabi Brown of TVC. Pick a copy of this compendium of mind-blowing stories and get abreast with issues as regards media convergence, leadership, health, star profiles, star programs, fashion, sports, human angle stories, and lots more. Meet some media professionals within our space who have paid their dues in no small ways. TV Guide, very incisive, very educative and compelling. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
As a strong immune system increases the chances of victims surviving COVID-19, a corruption-free society creates opportunities for citizens to thrive and prosper. Build your immunity. Stop corruption now. Report all acts of corruption to ICPC on this toll-free number 0800 2255 4272. This message is brought to you by ICPC and NTA.
You're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We still have our 3 guests with us in the studios. It turns out that the connection to Dr. Sagi and the Honorable Minister of Health is still troubled. If we do get him back on, then of course we'll get a last word from him on this very interesting conversation. Once again, let's bring in the Honorable Minister of State, Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Zubairu Dada. Why can Okoha was taking off what he thought were some of the contentious conclusions in his own view? He referenced the fact that there are a number of elections coming up later on in the year, perhaps last quarter of this year, and 5 countries in the West African sub-region: Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Guinea, Niger, Burkina Faso. They're having their elections, but the heads of state and government also commended the fact that a number of these countries are now into their 5th or perhaps 6th cycle of elections. And we don't know that outcomes of elections, particularly national elections, have often been a precipitate factor of the breakdown of law and order, and therefore political crisis. Of course, you sat through those meetings. What was the mood in considering this aspect on which the authority concluded with regard to the elections, and what needs to be done to ensure that conduct and the outcomes are acceptable to the electorate of the respective countries?
Well, if you recall, the summit did call on all of, admonished all of them, particularly those ones that were going into elections, to ensure that these elections were free and fair, because that is the only way to avoid, these unhealthy situations we're talking about, which of course give rise sometimes to coups, takeovers by the military. So I believe, given of course the fact that some of them have had, like you rightly observed, 5 or 6 cycles of elections, well, the summit was very hopeful that that spirit will be maintained, and that and that was why actually they called on their colleagues to ensure that these elections remain free and fair, because that is the only way to go. And what we're talking about is to ensure that there is stability within the region as much as possible, and that is only possible where we have free and fair elections, and where elections can actually be said to have been conducted transparently. So I guess that explains why they came to the conclusion that that was the only panacea to ensure that there were no coups, like it happened in Mali.
Paul? Yes, I think one would have expected, the president of Nigeria spoke, talked about this issue of third term, warning against it. And I think it is also time for peer review system to work, for African leaders to talk to themselves, because they stand a better position to say, brother, listen, this thing you are doing is going to cause kata. Please, can you? Because they are the ones. We are not expecting UN or another country or US or European Union to now come and begin to dictate to us when we are no longer in a position to look at the issue of Mali. So I think there are instruments like the additional protocol on democracy and good governance. It has, zero tolerance for takeover of government other than through constitutional means. But at the same time, I think it is time to also talk about governance. Where those who are governing fail, what do you do? Because that is the issue. It's not about not seizing power, and because that one is there. If they fail, are you going to wait till the next cycle of election to do that? By the way, ECOWAS is doing well until 18th of August. Most of the countries were conducting democratic system of government of one form or the other. So that is a plus, a movement away from. Remember the areas where the time where you used to have government in the bush and then another one in the city center. That has gone. And then to make sure that the military remains in the barracks, governance must address the issues that are germane to the contract between the government and the people. One, the welfare of the people, security of life and property, human rights, and then keeping to promises. Keita said he was going to end insecurity in Mali. That was part of what he promised and never delivered. So when politicians do not deliver, do we wait until, forever? And that is what is given. I'm not encouraging.
Was it the one that was fueling the insecurity that he was unable to deliver in it? We know what is happening in Mali in terms of insecurity. This is well beyond his control, and we are also suffering the consequences of what is happening in Mali and elsewhere around the Sahelian region.
Kingsley, you have spoken for me.
I didn't speak
hence,
for you.
no, look at it.
I asked the question.
Hence the issue of taking, you are saying why that if he had done his best, perhaps his best would have not have been enough.
Yeah.
That is your conclusion.
Yeah.
So you are saying that even when you put somebody there.
Don't forget, there are also troops that were, like you
exactly.
earlier, that were contributed by France and others, and yet they've not been able to contribute.
Exactly. So that's what that means. There is a fundamental problem that needs to be solved.
Okay, Dr. Ken Ukoha, look at, still on this issue, coming from a President Muhammadu Buhari, who commands high degree of integrity globally, and who has been elected twice as champion first of anti-corruption crusade and of COVID-19. What impact do you think this will have on members, especially those that will be going for the elections by the end of this year?
Okay, thank you very much. I think we must say this as Nigerians. Our leader, our president, commands that respect. Come rain, come sunshine. Anytime, any day. The international community knows this. And I think Nigeria should be proud of it. And in all the assignments that he's been given, give it to him. He has been excellent. However, I want to assert that Nigeria must need to become more assertive in diplomatic issues. And I give you one instance here. The president, in his speech during the summit, emphatically talked against any kind of third-term mentality from his fellow heads of states. That shows that he has nothing. In fact, in him, he doesn't want it. He is not supporting it. But unfortunately, I thought that the technocrats from Nigeria would have ensured that that thing was slotted in the communique. You can't find it there. Number two, I want to look at the authority of heads of states. In all of these advice that given, it appears there is a disconnect between the authority of heads of state and the citizens. So, if care is not taken, my worry is that people will now be thinking that the authority, that ECOWAS is a tea party for authority of heads of states. And we need to be careful, because people are not seeing anything coming down from ECOWAS in terms of project. By the way, there is what we call community development project. Yours sincerely, was a member of the team that designed that community development project, CDP, for ECOWAS, which etabulates, outlines demonstrable, practical projects for the region. Do you know, for the past 3 years, that document has been put under the bushel. You know why? No funds. But Nigeria, the reason why I'm making this point is that Nigeria is contributing so much. You need to put your mouth where your money is so as to direct their face. And finally,
so we can take our
is the fact that I also want to begin to see a framework from ECOWAS where the heads of states would at least once in a year address the citizens, the 450 million citizens of West Africa, if you like the states of the region address, connecting with the people. Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
So let me just respond to that matter of our president's statement with regards to term elongation. Now, this was a comment he made in his statement, which unfortunately he did not even deliver anyway. But because what he did was he submitted his statement, he did not read it out as such, and therefore, and of course, it was not discussed. And if you're talking about communique, you're talking about something that is agreed upon. It's not a matter that was discussed and agreed upon. He made his opinion known and it remains so. So it's not a matter of insisting that it must be in the communique. A communique is something that has been put before all the other members of the community, and of the summit.
Authority, yes.
And that they have actually accepted it, and it becomes part of the communique. So I just thought I should clear that point.
Yeah, the fact that it was not taken up means that some people are not reasoning the same
That is the point I'm making.
Yes, no, but at least that does not take anything away from the fact that he has said it, and it has reverberated.
Market it.
It continues to reverberate.
Yeah. That's right. That's not the only opportunity that our president will have.
Yes, there are lots of other
Precisely
opportunities.
what we're also discussing here could serve as a point of influence. Claire,
we have a tweet.
Yeah, we have tweets, but just before we take the tweets, I want to bring in the. I don't think Dr. Ihanere is still with us via Zoom. I don't think we're able to get back to him, but he already had this opportunity earlier on when we had that connection. The Honorable Minister of State Foreign Affairs, the summit took note of the fact that there are a number of positions for which citizens of
member countries
are vying. WTO, for instance, which is relevant to Nigeria, Dr. Konjo Iweala. The summit also commended the fact of the re-election of Akinwumi Adesina as president of African Development Bank, and noted two other positions in addition to that of the WTO. One, of course, relates to the African Union, and said that and resolved that member countries should seek to harmonize their positions and clear whatever disagreements or misgivings there might be, so that you can have block support, as it were, for candidates. I'm asking this question because it's sometimes been a sore point in our international relations that countries for whom Nigeria expends so much in terms of diplomatic relations and support oftentimes turn around to vote against Nigerians or Nigeria's interests when positions of this nature come up. What was your reading of that conclusion in the first instance, other than the plain text? And are we satisfied that going forward, and in particular with the forthcoming elections, including WTO, that will continue to get the support of ECOWAS brothers whenever we seek their cooperation and collaboration for our citizens?
Yes, we remain very hopeful. While respecting the sovereignty of member states, of each and every country, we also, like you rightly observed, expect some difference, especially where it's a it's a nation that we consider very friendly. But of course, with benefits of hindsight, we've also had to go back, sit back and re-strategize and ensure that we become very strategic in what positions we're vying for. And what that means, of course, is that we must ensure that we do our homework very well. We must have established our contacts, and in such a manner as to ensure that we do not get disgraced, as it were, when it matters most. This is something that we are very conscious of, but we continue to cultivate, as I said, these friendly nations. Of course, we must respect their sovereignty because they're independent nations. They have a right to vote whichever way they want to vote. But what matters to us is that we must be strategic. What that means, of course, is that we don't also have to spread out too thinly. Because if you spread out too thinly, the tendency is that, people get fed up with you. If you want to occupy all available positions, the natural tendency is people start, nations begin to raise issues. Why must it always be Nigeria? So we must be very strategic. We must know precisely what positions we want and go for them.
just one last question before we take our tweets. And I'm really trying to, think how to put this question across, but permit me the way I put it. I'm wondering, we did not table the issue of Nigeria and Ghana, at the summit. How do we determine what issues, to table or to present at summits such as the Authority of Heads of State and Government?
How do we determine? Yes, the issue of Ghana, for example, like I told you earlier, maybe we didn't table it because we are very confident that we're making some headway. They have sent a team to Nigeria, and we intend to also send another team. The legislature is already involved. We didn't want the matter to escalate, as it were. We don't want to give the impression that Nigeria and Ghana are at war. We're not. We're saying that there is a window, there is an opening, and we believe that very soon we should be able to come to some conclusions. Rather than blowing it out there, we just thought we should use diplomacy again and whatever means at our disposal to ensure that we address this matter once and for all, be it through diplomatic means or be it through, like the speaker said, legislative diplomacy. Whatever means at our disposal we intend to use. We didn't want the matter to escalate to that level, and that was why we just thought we should go ahead discussing them. And the other question was...
Yes, no, I just wanted, because there were some issues that we would have thought would have been discussed, at such...
Apart from the Ghana, Nigeria issue?
Yes, I'm just wondering how you come up with the issues,
Well, you see, the issues are, we consider them on the basis of priority. And if we didn't, maybe table some issues that you maybe thought about or thought we should have, it's because maybe they don't constitute an immediate priority for us for now. But like I said, talking specifically about the Ghana issue, we believe that very soon we should be able to resolve it without escalating to the level.
In other words, to summarize what you have said, Honorable Minister, you are hopeful that current bilateral engagements between Nigeria and Ghana could yield positive results.
Very, very
and
much
to the extent that Nigeria and
so.
Ghana are not at war, there was no need to escalate it to multilateral resolution.
Precisely.
All right, so we have some tweets that have come in. Some of the issues, of course, have also been discussed. I'll just take first a second, very briefly. It says ECOWAS needs to abandon a single currency project because it is doubtful there will be strong institutions to sustain it. And if ECOWAS decides to go ahead with it, Nigeria must opt out because it will not be beneficial to our economy.
Okay, and this is Mutana Farouk. I commend the exemplary leadership of ECOWAS and its member countries. The message from President Muhammadu Buhari on the issue of tenure elongation tendency by some African leaders is a message to take home from this summit.
And Law Alpha C says ECOWAS countries have to adopt workable and pragmatic strategies to ensure security of life and property and the recovery of the economy after COVID-19 era, plus moves to correct the political aberration in Mali by flushing out the junta should their ultimatum be ignored.
Okay, Usman Banu Kantu says what is paramount now is the diversification of economy, because ECOWAS is facing a myriad of security and economic issues that threatens the region's relative stability and economic progress. They must rid the region of terrorism and violent extremism, of course, to piracy and other vices.
Titus Mondenog says the communique issued at the end of the summit should be implemented, especially resolutions on security, health, education, and others.
All right, that does it for us, Kingsley. Right. Let's quickly appreciate all our contributors. It's been an engaging discussion. Let me appreciate the Honorable Minister of State Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Zubairu Dada. Thank you very much for giving light to our discussion today. Paulie J. Jime is an international affairs expert, consultant with ECOWAS and the EU on peace and security communications. Thank you very much for your contributions. And Dr. Ken Ukoha, President, National Association of Nigerian Traders. We do appreciate you. Of course, not forgetting the Honorable Minister of Health, who joined us via Zoom. Unfortunately, as Kingsley said, the devil got better part of the connection, and we couldn't return to him. Kingsley.
I said the demons.
The demons, okay.
All right, that does it for our conversation segment, and indeed for Good Morning Nigeria today. We appreciate your being with us. The program returns tomorrow same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, stay safe and be well. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Claire Adelabo Abdulrazak. Tomorrow promises to be an exciting edition. We'll be having the PDP candidate for the Edo governorship election. I hope you join us then.